If you've read this far, thank you. I don't need solutions, I don't need inspiration. I just needed to say this somewhere that isn't a hospital room or a performance review disguised as support. I was paralyzed from the chest down by a drunk driver, and all anyone cares about is when I'll be useful again. I wish I'd died. I don't really know how to start this, so I'll just say it plainly. A drunk driver hit me on my way home from work in July, and my life ended that night. I'm still breathing, still technically here, but the person I was is gone, and no one seems to want to acknowledge that. They keep talking about getting me back to work. Before the accident, my life was full in ways I didn't realize I'd ever have to grieve. I traveled whenever I could, sometimes on a budget, sometimes impulsively, sometimes just for the sake of seeing a place I'd never seen before. I went to concerts and stood near the front, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, feeling the bass in my chest and the crowd move like a living thing around me. I hiked. I walked for hours just because I could. I existed in my body without thinking about it. That body's gone now. The crash itself is fragmented in my memory. I remember headlights where they shouldn't have been. I remember the sound, metal collapsing, glass exploding, a noise so loud it felt like it erased everything else. I remember pain and then nothing. When I woke up in the hospital, there were tubes everywhere, a stiffness in my neck, and a strange numbness spreading downward that didn't make sense yet. I tried to move my legs. They didn't move. At first, everyone spoke in cautious half sentences. We're still assessing. There's swelling. It's too early to say. I clung to that uncertainty like a lifeline. Surely this was temporary. Surely this wasn't real. Then the words changed. Spinal cord injury. Complete. Permanent. Paralyzed from the chest down. I didn't scream or cry when they told me. I just went quiet. It felt like someone had handed me a story about someone else's life and expected me to accept it as my own. The days after that blurred together. Nurses turning me, machines beeping, well-meaning people telling me how lucky I was to be alive. I wanted to scream at them that they didn't understand what they were asking me to be grateful for. Alive for what? Very quickly, the conversation stopped being about survival and started being about productivity. A doctor asked me what I did for work before the accident, as if that was the most important detail about me. A rehab coordinator talked enthusiastically about return to work pathways before I'd even figured out how to sit up without passing out. A social worker handed me pamphlets about workplace accommodations like they were offering me hope. Every conversation circled back to the same question, phrased a dozen different ways. How soon can we make you economically useful again? No one asked me what I was grieving. No one asked me what I'd lost. No one asked me how it felt to wake up every morning in a body that felt foreign and hostile, like a prison I'd been locked into without consent. They talked about goals, measurable outcomes, independence, employability. They used words like resilience and adaptation and quality of life, but what they meant was work. Work was the finish line. Work was the proof that I was still worth investing resources in. It made me feel like my humanity had been replaced with a spreadsheet. Rehab was brutal in ways I wasn't prepared for, not just physically, but emotionally. Every small task, rolling over, transferring, learning to dress myself again, was framed as a step toward being functional, not joyful, not fulfilled, functional. I was praised when I pushed myself past exhaustion. I was gently corrected when I expressed sadness instead of motivation. There was always an unspoken expectation that I should be grateful, determined, inspirational. I didn't feel inspirational. I felt hollow. At night, when everything was quiet, the grief came crashing in. I thought about the things I'd never do again. I'd never travel the way I used to. Even if I technically could go somewhere, it wouldn't be spontaneous or simple or free. It would be a logistical nightmare of accessibility, equipment, bathrooms, airlines, assistance. Every adventure reduced to a checklist of obstacles. I'd never have good seats at a concert again. People don't talk about that, but it matters. I'd never stand in a crowd and feel the music in my legs. I'd never be anonymous in public again, never just blend in. My body would always announce itself before I did. I'd never walk into a place without planning. I'd never stop thinking about my body. That constant awareness is exhausting. It's like living with a low-level alarm that never turns off. When I tried to talk about this, people redirected me. You can still have a full life. There are adaptive sports. You'll find new passions. At least you can still work. Work. Always work. It felt like the only acceptable future anyone could imagine for me was one where I sat at a desk, proved I was still productive, and quietly accepted everything else I'd lost. As long as I could log hours and contribute, the rest of my pain was inconvenient background noise. I started to feel like a burden the moment I stopped being efficient. Some days, I found myself wishing the drunk driver had just killed me. That thought scared me, but it also felt honest in a way nothing else did. It wasn't that I wanted to die exactly. It was that I didn't want this life. The stripped down, monitored, evaluated version of living, where my value was measured by output instead of joy. I hated myself for thinking it. I hated that no one seemed to hear the desperation underneath it. When I said I was tired, they told me rest was part of recovery. When I said I was sad, they told me grief was normal. When I said I didn't see the point, they told me I'd feel differently once I got back to work, as if employment could replace everything I'd lost. I started to resent the word recovery. Recovery to what? There was no going back. There was only moving forward into something I didn't recognize and didn't want. The drunk driver got a sentence. I got a lifetime. Sometimes I think about the version of me that left work that day, got into my car, and expected to go home. That person didn't know they were saying goodbye to their body, their future, their sense of ease in the world. I miss them so much it physically hurts. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all this anger and grief. Therapy helps a little, but even there, the focus often drifts toward coping strategies and long-term goals. I want space to mourn without being told to reframe it. I want someone to say, yes, this is unfair. Yes, this is devastating. Yes, your life was taken from you in a real and irreversible way. Instead, I'm told to be strong, to be adaptable, to be grateful. I'm trying. I really am. But some days, the pressure to prove I'm still worth something feels heavier than the paralysis itself. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling like my life has been reduced to what I can produce instead of what I can experience. I don't know how to build meaning in a world that seems to only care whether I can still work. All I know is that I'm still here, even when I don't want to be, and I'm exhausted from carrying this alone.